וכולם מקבלים עליהם, ומלכות שמיים, וכולם מקבלים עליהם, ומלכות שמיים, וכולם מקבלים עליהם, ומלכות שמיים, ומלכות שמיים, וכולם מקבלים עליהם, ומלכות שמיים.
Baruchim Habaim. Welcome. It's time for Hebrew class. Talmidim, students, take out your workbook for Search the Sidra. This week we are on lesson number 17. The name of our Torah portion is Yitro. Let's begin by reading our vocabulary list. Beginning from the first line. Vayishma Yitro. Kohen Midyan. Choten Moshe. Et kol asher asa Elohim LeMoshe ul Yisrael amo. Ki chotzi Adonai et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. Did you notice this week that we had a lot of names? The name Moshe appeared twice. Israel appeared twice. The place Mitzrayim or Egypt appeared. And we also have a new place name, Midian. Midian is translated into English as Midian. It is the place where Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, lives. In addition, this week we had two references to God. The first was Elohim, and the second was the Tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, which we pronounce as Adonai. Let's look briefly at our challenge question number 1. It asks, which familiar word is hiding in the first line? Our first line reads, Vayishma Yitro. Well, this is the first time that we've been introduced to the name Jethro or Yitro in Hebrew, so that can't be familiar. But look very closely. The very first word listed, Vayishma. Do you hear the familiar word Shema? The Vav in front of the word means and. The Yud in front of the word is a new conjugation of the verb. And then we have our verb root, Shin, Mem, Ayin, Shema. And what does Shema mean? That's right, it means to hear or to obey. In this week's Torah portion, we find Yitro doing the hearing. Vayishma Yitro. Yitro was the Kohen Midyan, the high priest of Midian. He was also Choten Moshe, the father-in-law of Moses. But what was it that Yitro heard? What did he shema? He heard, reading from our fourth line, Et kol asher asa Elohim LeMoshe, meaning he heard all that God did for Moses and for Israel, his people, ul Yisrael amo. In this line, I would like to draw your attention to the Vav at the end of the word Am. Many of us are familiar by now that the Hebrew word Am, spelled Ayin Mem, means people or nation. Here we have a Vav making the sound O, following the word Am. Amo literally means his people. We have learned several times in our studies together that the Yud Vav at the end of a word, usually pronounced Av, indicates the pronoun his. Well, here is a secondary form of the same pronoun. The O sound at the end of a word, spelled as Vav, means his. So in this instance, ul Yisrael amo, we mean, and for Israel, his people, meaning God's people. And what was it that God did for Moses and for all of his people? Ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. The Lord brought Israel out of Egypt. Take a look at the last line, Mi Mitzrayim. I want to point out the mem in front of the word Mitzrayim. Remember that this means from. And just above it, we have that funny little Hebrew word et. Et has no translation in the English language, yet it appears twice in our Torah portion this week. It appears in our fourth line, et kol asher, meaning all that, and it appears in the second to last line, et Yisrael, wherein it indicates the direct object Israel. Let's look to our left-hand side of the page now at our Torah scroll. We will carefully examine the first line following every paragraph break to find the first verse of Torah portion, Yitro. We can see that it's not after the first paragraph break, nor the second, but it follows the third paragraph break. Are you ready to read from your Torah scroll? Put your finger on the first line and follow along. You can definitely speak the first word with me, Vayishma, because it's a familiar word. Try as best you can to read along as I read the first verse from our Torah portion. Let's begin. Vayishma Yitro, Kohen Midyan, Choten Moshe, et kol asher asa Elohim leMoshe ul Yisrael amo, ki hotzi Adonai et Yisrael mi Mitzrayim. Were you able to keep up? Kol hakavod. Good for you. Remember to do your homework this week, just 10 minutes each day. There are lots of fun activities, and you can continue filling out the answers in your challenge questions as well. Until next week, Litrot. Bye.
Oh,